If I talk about the most dangerous animal of the Ice Age, what would you imagine? Most people would immediately say a mammoth, a dire wolf, or maybe some oversized bear. And in some minds, the saber-toothed tiger would also appear.
But here's the strange part. People think they know about the saber-toothed tiger, but in reality, they don't know much at all, because what movies have shown is barely 10% of the real saber-tooth. The actual creature was far stranger than most people realize. Most people think of the saber-toothed cat as just a predator with long teeth, but paleontologists literally consider it a kind of headache because the saber-tooth didn't behave like a tiger, it didn't hunt like a tiger, and its build wasn't like a tiger either. The truth is, if the saber-tooth were alive today, it wouldn't even compete with a tiger in the jungle. It would be playing a completely different game. But how? How did scientists discover that this species was nothing like modern tigers or lions? When saber-tooth fossils were first discovered, scientists initially assumed it was a big cat with strong jaws and a powerful build. But when they properly studied the skull, everything changed. What they found completely shattered the original theory because the saber-toothed cat's bite force was actually weaker than that of a modern lion. Yes, you heard that right. Its bite wasn't that strong at all, and that's where the entire story flipped. Because if you're a predator and your bite is weak, how do you hunt? And that's where the saber-tooth becomes truly interesting. Its most famous feature, those long sword-like teeth, was actually its riskiest feature.
Those teeth weren't round, they weren't thick, they weren't designed to crush bones. They were flat and blade-like, which means if the bite landed at the wrong angle, the tooth could snap, and a broken tooth meant game over. This was a predator that didn't rely on speed, it didn't rely on endurance, and it didn't depend on bite force either, which is the biggest weapon of today's modern lions and tigers. So how was this predator surviving? The answer appears when we study the saber-tooth's body in detail. Its forelimbs were absurdly strong, its shoulders were extremely wide, its chest was deep and heavy. According to biology, that kind of build isn't meant for sprinting. It's built for wrestling and close combat. In their book, Lars Werdelin and Mauricio Anton clearly mentioned that the saber-tooth was an ambush grappler. It didn't chase prey, it waited. Then, in a sudden burst, it would leap onto the prey, slam it down with its body weight, pin it to the ground, and the moment the neck was exposed, it would finish the job. That means no prolonged fight, no long chase, no drama. Completely different from modern big cats. Their kingdom wasn't limited to one region either. The Machaerodontines, the entire group of saber-toothed cats with different subspecies, were present on almost every major continent, from North America to South America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. They were everywhere. But the design varied by location. In some places, the teeth were longer. In others, the body was heavier. Somewhere, the neck was extremely strong. Elsewhere, it was relatively weaker. It's as if nature didn't design this predator just once. It kept experimenting with it again and again, selecting different versions based on the environment. And when nature repeats a design multiple times, it usually means that design works, at least as long as the environment supports it. And that brings us to an uncomfortable question. If the saber-tooth was so successful, then why isn't even one alive today? The answer is simple. Normally, successful predators adapt, and cats especially are highly adaptable. But the saber-tooth didn't adapt. The reason is both simple and brutal, and much of it has to do with the Ice Age environment, which we'll cover later. For now, it's important to understand where saber-tooths were found and how their design was perfectly suited to their specific environments. If we study the Ice Age deeply, we notice something fascinating.
On every continent, there was a different type of saber-tooth from the same family, with the same terrifying fangs, but a completely different body design. Why? Because nature modifies the same weapon according to each battlefield. Let's start with North America. During the Ice Age, it was a mixed world. Dense forests and open plains filled with massive herds of bison, horses, and camels. Here, speed wasn't the key, control was. That's why a particular species evolved there, Smilodon fatalis. If you look at its body, you'll notice short legs, a wide chest, and unbelievably powerful forelimbs. It wasn't built for chasing, it was built for ambush. Because bringing down an animal like a bison wasn't just about having long teeth. First, you had to get the prey onto the ground. Fatalis would wrestle its prey with its massive front legs, and the moment the neck was exposed, it would strike. Its success wasn't in speed, it was in strength and control. Next comes Smilodon populator, found in South America. Here, the Ice Age environment was even more extreme. Giant ground sloths, one-ton monsters, roamed the land. Young gomphotheres, relatives of modern elephants, were also common. In other words, the prey was bigger. And when the prey gets bigger, the predator must grow bigger too. That's why Smilodon populator wasn't just a bigger version of Fatalis, it was a completely different beast. Weighing around 300 to 400 plus kilograms, its body was like a tank. It was likely more heavily built than any living cat today. Its teeth weren't just long, they were capable of deep penetration. And like its northern relative, it didn't rely on speed or finesse. It relied on raw power and the ability to grab and overpower massive prey. You could say North America produced balance, South America produced brute force. Now let's move toward Europe, where Homotherium latidens dominated. The Ice Age conditions here were different. Dense forests were less common, while open landscapes stretched across large distances. The prey animals were generally faster and more mobile. That meant a stocky, heavy-bodied predator like Smilodon would struggle in this environment. So Europe was ruled by Homotherium. Its teeth were shorter than those of Smilodon, but they were sharper, more blade-like. Its body was completely different. Long legs, a lean frame, and a build suited for endurance. Homotherium wasn't designed purely for ambush. It likely used a chase and bleed strategy, pursuing prey, slashing with its sharp teeth, and letting blood loss weaken the animal. Some fossil evidence even suggests possible group hunting and cooperative behavior. In a way, if North America produced the wrestler and South America produced the brute force tank, then Europe produced the tactical saber-tooth, one that may have relied on speed, endurance, and possibly even teamwork. Now, let's move toward Asia, a true nightmare continent during the Ice Age. Here, there were deserts, frozen steppes, mountains, and vast open grasslands. In such extreme and constantly shifting environments, a single body design simply could not survive everywhere. That's why in Asia we find multiple saber-tooth forms. One of the earlier ones was Machairodus, a more transitional saber-tooth with a medium build. Its design wasn't as extreme as later species, suggesting it was an evolutionary bridge between primitive saber-tooth cats and the more specialized forms that came later. Then there was Homotherium, which also roamed parts of Asia. These were long-distance hunters with wide roaming ranges, possibly following migrating herds across massive territories. Asian saber-tooths were flexible. Sometimes they ambushed, sometimes they chased, and sometimes they likely scavenged. In other words, Asia produced the survivor saber-tooth, one that could function in multiple environments rather than depending on just one strategy. Now comes Africa. Interestingly, the classic Smilodon-type saber-tooth was not dominant there. Instead, Africa had species like Dinophilis. Dinophilis was not an extreme saber-tooth. It looked almost like a prototype, with moderately long canines and a body that seemed like a mix between a leopard and a lion. Its hunting style was likely mixed as well. But even at that time, Africa was already packed with predators: early lions, hyenas, leopards, and other carnivores. Competition was intense. Saber-tooths there had to carve out very specific niches to survive. And then, within just 10,000–12,000 years, all of these designs disappeared together. So how did such successful and dominant predators vanish so completely?
About 12,000 years ago, the Ice Age began to end. The climate warmed rapidly, grasslands transformed, and prey animals, mammoths, giant sloths, and other large herbivores started to decline. The saber-tooth was a specialist predator, built specifically to hunt large prey. When the megafauna disappeared, its primary food source vanished as well. On top of that, early humans arrived, hunted the same prey, increased competition, and disrupted the ecosystem. The result? An over-specialized body, plus food shortage, plus climate change, plus human pressure. Within just a few thousand years, the saber-tooths vanished, and just like that, the king of the Ice Age became history.